Are you tired of seeing your students struggle with tests that don't truly measure what they know? Or maybe you're wondering why some of your assessments aren't quite hitting the mark. Well, you're in the right place. In today's video, we're going to tackle the most common testing pitfalls that are holding your students back. And more importantly, I'm going to give you some super simple strategies to fix them, starting today. Let's be real. How many times have you handed out a test only to see that confused look on students' faces? Not because they don't know the material, but because the question itself felt like a puzzle to solve. Here's the thing. When it comes to testing language learners, we want to assess what they know, not how well they can decipher tricky question wording. That's where simplifying your test language comes into play. Don't worry, I'm not telling you to dumb anything down. In fact, this is about making sure your questions are clear and direct, especially for lower proficiency students. Imagine your question like a well-lit path. You want to guide them towards the answer without unnecessary twists and turns. Stick around because I've got a few easy ways to make sure your test questions don't leave your students scratching their heads. Another common trap? Trying to test too many concepts in a single question. Trust me, I've been there, wanting to squeeze out every bit of knowledge out of the one assessment. But here's the kicker. Overloading a question not only confuses students, it also makes it harder for you to gauge what they actually know. The trick? Focus each question on one clear concept. When students are able to zero in on just one thing, they're more likely to show you what they've truly mastered. So if you're tempted to throw in a little bit of grammar, a vocabulary challenge, and a cultural reference all in one, don't. Give each concept its own spotlight and watch how much clearer the answers become. Now here's where things get even more helpful. Examples. Imagine a student is halfway through reading your question and suddenly they hit a mental roadblock. It's not that they don't know the answer, it's that they don't quite get what you're asking. By adding a short, simple example within the question, you can clear up any confusion without giving away the answer. It's like offering a little nudge in the right direction without doing the work for them. A well-placed example helps your students feel more confident and less stressed. And who wouldn't want that? Trust me, these small tweaks can make a huge difference in your classroom. Let's talk about assessments. Because if we're being honest, nobody loves a test that's all multiple choice, right? It's like eating the same meal every day. Sure, it works, but eventually everyone's bored. And when it comes to language testing, relying on just one question type does a real disservice to both you and your students. Instead, why not mix it up? Throw in a combination of multiple choice, short answer, and even some comprehension questions. By doing that, you're tapping into different skills and giving every student a fair shot at showing what they know. And here's the fun part. You don't have to overhaul your whole test. A few well-placed short answers next to some comprehension questions will do the trick. But hang tight, because we're just getting started on how to create a truly balanced assessment. Ever felt like your tests were a little too one-dimensional? Here's the thing. If your assessment only focuses on reading or writing, you're missing a huge part of the language puzzle. Language is a multi-skill game, and your test should reflect that. To really gauge your assessment's abilities, make sure you're assessing across all modes: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. This gives you a holistic view of their proficiency and ensures you're not just testing one skill over and over. Trust me, it's eye-opening to see how students perform when they have to listen to something and then respond, or when they're asked to write based on a spoken prompt. It adds depth to your assessment and gives students more chances to shine. Sound complicated? It's easier than you think, and your students will thank you for it. And speaking of making tests more engaging, let's talk about real-life context. Why ask students to translate random sentences when you could have them solve real-world problems, like ordering food at a restaurant or giving directions to a lost tourist? Not only does this make your assessments feel more relevant, but it also shows whether students can actually use the language in practical situations. And isn't that the whole point of language learning? These real-life scenarios bring your test to life and get students thinking beyond the classroom. So next time you're designing a test, Ditch the textbook examples and create something that mirrors the world they'll be using the target language in. Before you head out, if you're looking to take your language teaching to the next level, don't miss the Comprehended 2025 conference. It's packed with CI-based strategies, expert sessions, and practical takeaways you can apply right away in your classroom. And the best part? You can access it from anywhere, no travel needed. Whether you want a 3, 6, 9, or 12-month pass, there's an option that works for you. Head over to comprehended.co/register and grab your spot. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. We've all seen it. The second you say test, the tension in the room spikes and students go from relaxed to panic mode in about 2 seconds flat. It's almost like a reflex. But here's the good news. Reducing that anxiety is totally within your control. It all starts before the test even hits their desks. One of the best ways to lower those stress levels? A solid study guide. I'm not talking about handing out a random list of terms. I mean a clear guide that outlines exactly what students need to know. Key vocabulary, sentence structures, and maybe even a few examples of what the test will look like. When students know what's coming, they'll walk into the test feeling prepared, confident, and way less anxious. But wait, we're just getting started on how to keep that calm energy going. Now here's where things get really interesting. Practicing tests. I know, more tests might sound counterproductive when you're trying to lower anxiety. But hear me out. These aren't just any tests. They're low-stakes practice quizzes. Think of them like warm-ups before the big game. These mini-tests give students a feel for the format and style of questions they'll face, but without the pressure of grades hanging over their heads. It's like letting them rehearse before opening night. The more familiar they are with the process, the less nervous they'll be when it really counts. Trust me, a few practice runs can make a huge difference on the test day. And here's the icing on the cake, giving your students a little choice. Imagine how much pressure would ease up if, instead of having to answer every question, they got to choose which ones they felt most comfortable tackling. Something like, pick 3 out of these 5 questions. Not only gives them a sense of control, but also lets them showcase their strengths. This tiny bit of flexibility can go a long way in reducing that test anxiety. They'll feel empowered, and you'll truly get to see what they truly know without the added stress. It's a win-win. And that's a wrap. I hope these tips help you avoid those common testing pitfalls and create assessments that truly show what your students know. Now, if you're curious about the top 5 assessment myths that might be holding your students back, you'll definitely want to check out this next video. Just click right here. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. What's one thing you do to help your students feel more confident during a test? Drop your answers in the comments below. Happy comprehensible input.